This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft, because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. My summer session of group coaching for novelists is now open for registration. Go to www.wordessential.com/fiction coaching. Get all the details about the session, listen to past group coaching writers describe their experience with me, and sign up for your free discovery call today. That's wordessential.com/fiction coaching. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Kathryn and I are going to talk about dialogue.
Woohoo, dialogue.
Talking, when you make people talk.
That's right. Exactly.
On paper.
Kind of essential for a story,
Yes.
but yeah.
In quotation marks, might I say.
In quotation marks.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now, and it's published, I think, by, it's one of the big five.
One of those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big five imprint. And there are no quotation marks.
Oh,
and it drives me nuts. They've also dispensed with a lot of necessary commas, which also drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are lots of places where it does change the meaning of the sentence.
Yes.
And I think as a reader who's, not in my youth, I'm trained to recognize where a comma should be. And so I sort of mentally place it, even though it's not there. But what about...
So you're editing the whole time you're reading.
Pretty much. And what about young readers who aren't as well trained? And then I had this thought too that like Amazon just rolled out its AI audiobook program. So if you can't afford a voice actor, which voice actors, deserve what they earn, but it's a lot of money. It's a big project.
They're an investment. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are going to be going to AI audiobooks.
And AI is only as good as what you feed it.
Yes. So how is AI going to manage text when people are going all experimental with their punctuation?
Right.
And
yeah.
I'm sorry, I sound like an old stick in the mud here, and I'm not that old, I promise. But
no, but it's true. It's like, clarity. It's clarity, right? If you don't have that quotation mark, it's hard for readers. If you don't have the comma, it's hard for readers. If you don't have a dialogue tag, it's hard for readers.
Right.
Who said that? I don't know. Were they mad when they said it? Who knows? What were they doing while they said it? I don't know.
Are we watching a tennis match?
Right? I don't know.
B, A, B, A, B. Wait, a third person's on stage.
Who's that? Where'd they come from?
I know. Who said that?
We don't know. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you are making readers have to back up in your text to figure out who's speaking, where am I in the dialogue? Was this said by this player or that player?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And the quotation marks thing, this is another thing that you want to have the narrative power to have inner dialogue that is not spoken out loud. And if you're taking quotation marks away from your external dialogue, how are you having the inner monologue or the inner thoughts that are expressed out loud in the character's head, right? Where it's separated out, I wanted to say versus did actually say. And again, it's a whole clarity thing. You want to have that narrative power. Don't take it away from yourself.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And, so let's just establish the convention here so that everybody knows what, sorry, I'm going to throw shit out there, should be happening.
I should. Don't say it. Say it in.
I know. I hope I don't fall off of my high horse. We're a little slap happy today. It's Friday.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right, you've got your narrative exposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which includes point of view characters' interiority that is not quoting a thought. So you can be writing just a normal paragraph and you can give us the characters' feelings, perspective, and thoughts that are not in direct quote in that narrative. And then when you do quote a thought, so you're giving us the exact phrasing, the exact wording of the character in the character's voice, but it's internal instead of spoken, you put it into italics. Spoken dialogue goes into quotation marks with dialogue tags as needed, not to be overdone, but definitely not omitted. Sorry. I'm really on my horse now. I'm going. Giddy up.
No, go. Yeah.
Right. And you place your quoted dialogue with the speaker in a paragraph. So whether you're using a tag like he said, she said, or not, it is placed with the speaker. I have seen lots of manuscripts where character A says something and the next sentence attached to it in the paragraph is character B's response. Ooh. Or vice versa, right? Character A does something and then it's character B's response. And even with the dialogue tag, no, you put the paragraph break there where the transition is, where the break is between the characters, whether they're doing, thinking, feeling, or speaking, right? If it's not the same character, we need that paragraph break.
Yes.
Obviously, we can all find examples of narrative that plays with this and where things flow more or less differently, but just to establish the basic foundational convention of handling dialogue. There it is. Yep.
Yes, those paragraph breaks are so important. Like having everybody crammed into one paragraph is it's so confusing for the reader. So make sure that you remember you have an enter key and a tab key. And a quotation key. All those things are there. No, it's so funny how hard dialogue can be sometimes for people who maybe are just starting out writing things down. It's like you read it so often it becomes almost invisible, right? You don't see it on the page because of these conventions. You just read it and there's dialogue. So, but if you don't have these conventions, that doesn't become invisible. It sticks out, like you're saying, it driving you crazy in the book you're currently reading. So,
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know, if she wrote it that way, if her publisher wanted it to be that way, if there was discussion around it or not, if she had an artistic choice behind that decision. I don't know. But
now it would be cool if there's like a twist. I don't know.
Yeah, and well, it's especially confusing in this book because it's a dying woman. This woman, the protagonist, is on her deathbed. So you're either in the room with her or you're in the past in her memories. And even when you're in the room, she's dying and she's drugged up and she's not that lucid. Right. And so the whole book is interiority, basically. There's a little bit of like people coming and going from the room with some dialogue. But it's like, wow, if ever you wanted convention to assist the reader with understanding the narrative shifts through this character's consciousness and reality. Yeah. This is a story where I would want it.
Well, and that's what I was like thinking is if you have some sort of reason for it to not be marked out, like maybe you think that you're talking to 4 different people, but in reality, it's all in their head. Like, and that's how you're demarking that, then you have to have it separated out by having actual quotations and other things for people that are real, right? So then you'd have to be able to say, this is the reason that I'm doing this. And I feel like saying just to do it is very James Joyce of you. So yeah.
Oh, James.
Like, we're just going to have state of conscious, whatever. I don't know. We don't need to do that.
Right. Right. And it starts to feel stream of consciousness.
Stream of consciousness. That's what I was thinking. Yes.
I'm reading and I don't enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not picking on this author.
No.
There are many very beautiful sentences, but I am saying that I find this book problematic for this reason around punctuation. And that's why. So,
yeah. And you would hate to have to put a book down because of that.
Right. Yes. And I put many a book down when I find something about it tedious, as a reader. My personal experience of reading should not be tedious because then it becomes work and I read for work all the time. I'm always working when I read. So when I read, I don't want to be working,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Which leads also to just poorly written dialogue. Like that, when I get into a stream of dialogue that's just so, I don't know, pointless or maybe too real or something like that. Dialogue is an art form all in and of itself. So be aware of what you're putting on the page. I mean, we just talked about a couple of short stories that have some really great dialogue that's full of subtext, that not everything is on the page. Or where, like in the case of the lady with the little dog.
Chekhov.
Yeah, Anna is almost too much, right? It's like almost word vomit on the page. But that's the point, right? It's demonstrating that she's just chattering on and she almost doesn't even know what she's saying and she's just saying words to try and express herself. But it doesn't go on for, 6 times in a row where she's doing that. There's one paragraph block of dialogue where he's demonstrating that and then it's done. And you already know this is part of her character and this is part of how she processes and this is part of how she's trying to deal with her reality. And so the dialogue takes on more than just her speaking. It means something about who she is and what she's trying to express.
Right. Well, and it shows her emotional state, which is important here because Chekhov is giving us Dimitri's point of view. And so when we are learning how Anna feels, it's through her dialogue. So even when she's annoying Dimitri, our point of view character, we understand what's behind it. We don't just get that he's annoyed because she's emotional. We understand what's happening inside her through her tears and through her dialogue. And that's what dialogue should do. It should reveal something to the reader.
Yeah. And a lot of times that's how you are going to reveal your supporting characters because you're not going to have everybody have a point of view. So that interiority that you get with your point of view character isn't there. Right. So the dialogue is your opportunity to do that. So don't waste it. Don't waste space. But also, it shouldn't be one dimensional.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, do you want to say anything about this dialogue tag issue? I know before we started this topic, you had
I did. Yeah. I've heard advice given to writers that maybe did not know better that you just should get rid of all of your dialogue tags. And I personally think that's a very poor choice. Because again, clarity. How in the world are you supposed to know who is saying what? And also, for the most part, a dialogue tag is invisible to your reader. It's not going to bother them. Like he said, she said, like that just disappears. It's convention. It's like a quotation mark. It's like you just understand, oh, he said that.
Right.
Or the name of the person. I think this advice did not include like action beats that revealed who'd said it. She stirred her tea as she told her friend or whatever. But just specifically, like she asked, she said, she screamed, she, all of these kind of tags that I feel like don't underestimate them.
Right. Well, I wonder if this advice is coming. I mean, it could, I haven't heard this. This is the first I've encountered this happily, but it could be a trend. And now I'm just the trend is reaching me, in which case, oh God, no, save us. Or it could be that some people who are not, who are taking the idea of show, don't tell to an extreme. There are a lot of writers who don't really understand the power of narrative. And so they try to write stories that just move you from action to action to action to action. And they read more like a script than a novel. And, as you were saying, he said, she said is this invisible marker that assists the reader in understanding the story, like the quotation mark. We don't read dialogue and go, stop, period. Okay, quotation mark. Somebody was speaking here. We just see it. We register it in our brain. And there's no interruption of the flow of the story. And, he said, she said functions the same way.
It does sort of feel like an extrapolation of like somebody was told, it's almost like the don't use adverbs or show, don't tell or passive voice, it's people don't understand exactly the reason behind what they're told. And so they don't understand the full depth of what we're saying. It's like, don't use dialogue tags. Maybe that means that all they were doing was this, and it was starting to get really, and they're flipping back and forth, and it was just like a constant. Right. And so it's like, break it up, use some different words, use an action beat, change the pattern of your sentences, maybe don't have rapid fire dialogue, give us some narrative.
Right.
And then it got interpreted as dialogue tags are bad. And then it's getting passed to other authors or other writers as, don't use that. Don't you know that that's repetitive and bad? And then people who don't know better are saying, oh, okay. And that's, to me, that's so sad because it's very, it takes away what truly is the point, which is let's write beautiful stories.
Yes.
Yeah,
that communicate with readers in a meaningful way. And if you're making your reader work to understand you, you're doing something wrong. And I don't mean to understand you in the sense of nuanced or complex or rich or lyrical.
Readability.
I mean, yeah, exactly. At the most basic level. Yes.
Yeah.
Your reader is confused, or your story is getting tedious because you are forcing this additional layer of work in order to move through the story with you. You're diminishing enjoyment.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, at least in my experience, when I read newer writers, we get a lot of dialogue, because it feels like the only way to communicate information. And we've talked about it a lot, like the power of your narrative. Don't mess with that. It's just so funny how quickly we rely on that spoken communication. And so being able to take a look at your dialogue and say, okay, where do I need to, take this out and put it in narrative, or put it into a different scene where it's shown through what's happening versus just having her talk about it. And once you start recognizing those areas in your writing, then your dialogue becomes better, because you're not just relying on it for every little piece of information or every scene where you, oh no, this has to happen. Like, let's get another character in the room so we can talk about it. No, you don't need to do that. And I think having that power as a writer, it's a freeing thing to know that you do not have to rely on that dialogue. And in fact, you can just let it be kind of the sprinkles that make it better, because you get that wit or that personality really coming through, or the revelation from that one character that you've been waiting for, or whatever it is. So, yes.
So, all right, I'm going to do a shameless plug here.
Do it.
All right. I have an implant. Well, I've got like most of my book on point of view, the Storyworks Guide to Writing Point of View, right? It's about your character's point of view, but it is significantly and importantly about your narrative point of view. And I have a whole chapter in there called Heart Your Narrator. So show your narrator some love, people.
Right? So if you've never heard this before and you're like, what do you mean? There you go. Go check it out. You can learn.
Yeah.
And learn.
Or even if you have heard it before, go check it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Learn more. It's always good to learn more.
Yes. Yeah. And then, okay, also writing prompt. Write a scene, take a scene you've written, right? That is heavy with dialogue or that relies on dialogue to advance the story. And that in itself is not a bad thing. So even if you handle dialogue beautifully, just as an exercise and an exploration of what you can do with narrative and further develop your skills, take that scene that's dialogue rich or heavy, and then rewrite it. So you've got the same characters, the same setting, and the same movement or purpose in that scene. Rewrite it with no dialogue. Use your narrative exposition. Use your point of view character's interiority. Use your character's movements on the page through the setting and their interactions with each other. You know, and at the end of the day, maybe it's impossible to write the same exact scene with the same exact meaning with zero dialogue, but you might be able to get there with
less,
1, 2, or 3 sentences. See what you can do. And it's not to put that scene in a book, it's to explore and develop your abilities. My newsletter, A Room Full of Books and Pencils, is growing every week with new reflections, writing tips, and transcripts of the podcast. It's also where I make announcements about things like upcoming writing workshops and coaching sessions. Check out A Room Full of Books and Pencils at booksandpencils.substack.com. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.